Have you ever noticed that Final Fantasy X's strongest weapons have strangely specific names? Names like Caladbolg, Nirvana, Masamune. Some of them are thousands of years older than Final Fantasy itself. Others have been part of this series since its earliest days. And one of them is just called World Champion. So why? Why would Square give Tidus a sword named after a legendary Celtic weapon? Why is Yuna's staff named after the highest state of enlightenment in Buddhism? Why does Auron wield the name of Japan's most famous swordsmith? And why, after all of that, does Wakka simply get World Champion? Each one tells you something about the character who wields it, their past, their purpose, even the role they were always meant to play in Spira. Once you see the pattern, it's impossible to look at these weapons the same way again. So today, we're uncovering the hidden meaning behind every celestial weapon in Final Fantasy X. Let's start with the weapon that probably raises the biggest question: Caladbolg. It's not a word you hear every day, and despite sounding like something Square Enix invented, it's actually over 1,000 years old. Caladbolg comes from Irish mythology, more specifically from the Ulster cycle, one of Ireland's oldest collections of heroic legends. Its wielder was Fergus mac Roch, a legendary king and one of the greatest warriors in Celtic folklore. According to the stories, Caladbolg was a weapon so overwhelming that a single swing could level the tops of hills and carve entire paths through the landscape. Some historians even believe it may have inspired later legends surrounding Excalibur, though that connection is still debated. Either way, one thing is clear. Caladbolg represented overwhelming power. Once it was drawn, nothing could stand in its way. So why give that name to Tidus? At first glance, it almost feels random. Tidus isn't a king or some legendary knight, and unlike Auron, he doesn't even begin the story as an experienced warrior. But that's exactly why the name works. Throughout Final Fantasy X, Tidus isn't defined by what he already is. He's defined by what he becomes. A boy thrown into a world that isn't his. Someone who spends most of the journey trying to understand why he was brought to Spira at all, until, eventually, he becomes the one person capable of ending a cycle that had lasted for 1,000 years. Just like its mythological counterpart, Caladbolg is a symbol of the individual who changes the world through sheer determination. If Caladbolg came from myth, Masamune came from history. Unlike Fergus mac Roch, Masamune was a real person. He lived in Japan during the late Kamakura period, around the late 13th and early 14th centuries, and is widely regarded as the greatest swordsmith who ever lived. His blades became legendary because they were beautiful, and because of their craftsmanship. Even today, surviving Masamune swords are considered national treasures. Masamune had become something much bigger than the man himself. He had become a symbol. And that's exactly how Final Fantasy has treated the name for nearly 40 years. Long before Auron carried it, the Masamune had already appeared throughout the series as one of its most iconic legendary weapons. Sometimes wielded by unforgettable characters, but almost always representing the pinnacle of swordsmanship. So why give that name to Auron? Because no one else in Final Fantasy X embodies that ideal more naturally. Auron never fights to prove himself. He doesn't seek glory. He doesn't even speak more than necessary. Every movement is deliberate. Every decision is measured. He carries immense strength, but never wastes it. Just like the legend surrounding Masamune himself, True mastery isn't about power alone. It's about knowing exactly when to use it. And in that sense, Auron may be the most fitting bearer of the name the series has ever had. The next celestial weapon couldn't be more different. Nirvana. It's one of the central concepts in Buddhism. The word nirvana refers to the ultimate liberation, a state beyond suffering, beyond attachment, beyond the endless cycle of death and rebirth known as samsara. It's the complete release from a cycle that seems impossible to escape. If that sounds familiar, it's because escaping an endless cycle is exactly what Final Fantasy X is about. For generations, the people of Spira believed sin could only be defeated through sacrifice. Again, and again, and again. Summoners would complete their pilgrimage, perform the final summoning, and give their lives believing they had saved the world. Yuna's journey begins with the same goal. She believes her destiny is to sacrifice herself for a temporary peace. But by the end of the story, she chooses something no summoner before her ever could. Instead of accepting the cycle, she breaks it. And suddenly, the name Nirvana stops feeling symbolic. It becomes literal. Because Yuna achieves exactly what Nirvana represents, not simply defeating sin, but freeing an entire world from a cycle of suffering that had endured for 1,000 years. If you've only played Final Fantasy X, this next name probably sounds completely out of place. Onion Knight? Really? Why is Lulu's ultimate weapon named after an onion? The answer is simple. It isn't. Onion Knight is one of the oldest and most beloved concepts in the entire Final Fantasy series. The Onion Knight first appeared in Final Fantasy III. Originally, it was a job that seemed almost useless. Its stats were mediocre for most of the game. Most players would replace it the moment they found something stronger. But those who stuck with it discovered something remarkable. At extremely high levels, the Onion Knight became one of the strongest jobs in the entire game. A class that rewarded patience over instant power. Over the decades, it became much more than a job. It became a symbol of Final Fantasy itself, appearing in games like Dissidia, Theatrhythm, and countless other spin-offs. The Onion Knight came to represent the idea that true strength isn't always obvious at first glance. So, why Lulu? Unlike the others, this is probably the weakest direct connection between a character and their weapon's name. The reference feels like a tribute to Final Fantasy's own history, a reminder that not every celestial weapon looks beyond the franchise for inspiration. Sometimes, honoring your own legacy is just as meaningful as borrowing someone else's. Not every celestial weapon was named after an ancient legend. Some of them are surprisingly straightforward. Take Wakka's weapon, World Champion, after Celtic mythology, Buddhist philosophy, Japan's greatest swordsmith, and one of Final Fantasy's oldest jobs. You might expect another forgotten legend. But no, it's simply the title every Blitzball player dreams of earning. That's it. No hidden mythology, no ancient kingdom, no centuries-old manuscript. Just World Champion. That's it. Booyah! Then there's Kimahri's weapon. If you're playing the English version, you know it as Spirit Lance, a name that reflects the Ronso themselves, a people deeply connected to honor, tradition, and the spiritual significance of Mount Gagazet. It fits Kimahri's journey perfectly, but here's the interesting part. That wasn't its original name. In the Japanese version of Final Fantasy X, Kimahri's celestial weapon is called Longinus. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Longinus is the traditional name given to the Roman soldier said to have pierced Jesus Christ's side during the crucifixion. The weapon itself became one of Christianity's most famous relics, known throughout history as the Holy Lance, or the Spear of Longinus. So why was it changed? Square Enix has never given an official explanation. It's possible the English localization wanted to avoid an explicit Christian reference. Unlike the other celestial weapons, Kimahri's is the hardest to interpret. Longinus is a name Final Fantasy veterans may already recognize. Why Square chose that name specifically for Kimahri, we simply don't know. Finally, there's Godhand. Unlike Caladbolg or Masamune, this isn't the name of a single legendary weapon. It's a title, one that has carried extraordinary meaning across both history and popular culture. One possible inspiration comes from Masutatsu Oyama, the founder of Kyokushin Karate. Renowned for his seemingly superhuman feats of strength and martial arts mastery, Oyama earned the nickname the God Hand, a title reserved for someone whose skill appeared almost beyond human. But the expression reaches even further back. In Jewish and Christian tradition, the hand of God became one of the oldest symbols in religious art. For centuries, artists avoided depicting God in human form. Instead, a single hand descending from the heavens represented his presence, or his direct intervention in the world. Whether Square drew inspiration from martial arts, religious symbolism, or both, the central idea remains the same. A hand capable of accomplishing what ordinary people cannot. And that's exactly who Rikku is, finding solutions where everyone else sees impossible odds. If any character in Final Fantasy X could earn the title of God Hand, it would be the Albed engineer who proves that sometimes ingenuity is its own kind of miracle.